Welcome to this episode of the Federal's Worldly Wise program, a weekly show that attempts to cut through the complexities of international politics to zero in on issues that matter. Today, we are on the eve of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Sri Lanka, scheduled between April 4th and 6th, that is tomorrow. To discuss this, we have with us senior journalist M.R. Narayan Swamy on assignment with the Federal. MR, as he is popularly called, is an expert on Sri Lanka, having reported from there and continuing to keep track of developments in Sri Lanka. He is also the author of a few best-selling books on Sri Lanka and all the politics that have happened there over the last so many decades. Modi's visit to Sri Lanka is keenly being watched as the relationship between India and Sri Lanka is on a cusp, moving up and down and exhibiting a general uncertainty. Do you think Modi's visit will make a difference, say, help stabilize the relationship?
I think it's a hope that all of us should have that yes, it will make a difference. It ought to make a difference. For one reason being, this is a time when India needs Sri Lanka as much as Sri Lanka needs India. India needs Sri Lanka because India's neighborhood is in turmoil, and there are not many countries around India right now you can call are really in love with India. That being the case, Sri Lanka is a kind of a rare exception, although there are uncertainties in that relationship. But hopefully, with a new government, with a complete majority in hand, in power in Colombo, and it's fortunate that they have matured to understand that there are certain Indian sensibilities which need to be respected, and so I think this visit will play a hugely important role in stabilizing and probably further cementing the relationship.
Yeah, MR, if you recollect, in the 80s, you had a situation where India was completely in charge of Sri Lanka. There was nothing like, any other country even remotely coming close to, the kind of relationship that India had, especially I'm basically thinking of China. But today, it's like, whenever we talk of, say, India, Sri Lanka, we also need to bring in China somewhere into the picture. How this thing has happened to the detriment of Indian interest, but has that will that ever be sorted out, you think, or what do you I mean, how would you see this? I mean, is it just part of a larger change in the world order, or the differences in that have happened in the subcontinent?
You are right, Dakshin. It is part of a larger change in the world order. That apart, we also need to look at this issue from a Sri Lankan perspective as opposed to an Indian perspective, and which on the issue of China are vastly different. Now, as far as Sri Lanka is concerned, China has been a very old and reliable friend from the 1960s. And also, if you take forward the situation to the 2000 year, 2008, 2009, when Sri Lanka was battling the LTT, the end stages of the war, that was a period when India, rightly, wrongly, we're not getting into that, refused to provide heavy weapons. Western countries were also extremely reluctant. The two countries which came forward to, among some other countries, one was China and one was Pakistan. So we have to understand that the Sri Lanka will always like to have a warm and robust relationship with China and also with Pakistan. Two countries India doesn't have friendly relations at all. So we have to put up with this. The best we can hope from Sri Lanka is that they will understand that they should not be playing China against India and vice versa, and that they need to be very, very conscious of India's strategic interests, India's strategic concerns, security concerns. And on that point, I think the present government understands the issues.
And also, if you if you recollect, coming back to the current government of Anuradhapura, he had come to India some time back, and then there was a lot of hope expressed, that things are coming back on an even keel. Of course, let's also not forget that India played a really a good role in when Sri Lanka was in that economic crisis, just a couple of years ago. And I think a lot of people, I think it helped a lot of people in Sri Lanka look at India, in a more positive way, than it was before that. So that is a kind of a investment that kind of India made. You think that will reap, that is reaping any benefits, or though I'm not able to see anything immediately. Do you think there's anything happening on on that front?
It is already happening, Dakshin. As we need to understand that no political party in any country will be able to change its trajectory overnight and do a 180-degree U-turn. They are answerable to their people. Now, whether you like it or you don't like it, the JVP was the most organized anti-India force in the Sri Lankan political radar. And for them to have come this far is itself a huge change. And
Yeah.
for them to say certain things, for example, let us assume that there is going to be a defense agreement between India and Sri Lanka. Already there is opposition to that agreement from sections of the Sri Lankan Sinhalese political establishment. If despite that, and knowing that this could happen, if Anurag Disnaike and his leadership council is proceeding ahead, it means that there is a change. You are right. The fact that India went out of its way to bail out Sri Lanka when it was in absolutely deep crisis has had an effect even on the JVP. And
Hmm.
also, let us also understand the JVP is also evolving. It is evolving to a rapidly changing world situation. It is evolving to a China which is not the China that the JVP's founders were used to in the 1960s. And it is evolving to other international developments. So I think changes are happening.
Hmm. In fact, your piece on Modi's visit, the curtain raiser, was interesting. What was intriguing to me is that what is this about this defense pact with India that is really causing the kind of misgivings, as you put it, within Sri Lanka, and why would this be there in the first place? I mean,
The formal pact, we don't know the details because the details have not been given. There is a very healthy defense relationship between India and Sri Lanka, and this has been on even at a time when India was seen as supporting the Tamil separatist campaign, even if India did not actually do it. So the healthy relationship always existed, and the putting anything formally in terms of a pact, the problem in Sri Lanka has been that if government A does a pact, then opposition B opposes it, and probably when the roles change, the B becomes A and A becomes B. So this is a headache, a constant headache in Sri Lanka. There is a section in Sri Lankan political establishment which feels that we should not bow to India, and signing an agreement which they feel would kind of jeopardize our relationship with China is not a good thing to happen. Now, that is their
mm,
understanding. It is for the government of Sri Lanka to sell this project if it happens, as to what exactly it means, how it will benefit Sri Lanka, and how, because of this fact, Sri Lanka is not going to be get entangled in any Sino-Indian confrontation.
I mean, I was also thinking, the reason for this is also the prevalence of the Tamil question, as we can put it that way. And the Tamil question is important for India. I mean, obviously, because because of Tamil Nadu and the Indian interests there over the last so many decades. And within Sri Lanka, there is a lot of awareness about this Tamil connection between the two. And then we have seen the kind of issues that have happened in the past, some of the misadventures and the issues that happened. You think that is it a permanent kind of a feature, or is there a kind of a, since you've been following it closely, is there a kind of a change in the relationship between the Sinhalese and the Tamils in Sri Lanka, which can kind of erase this, or ease out this kind of misgivings, in the, say, since 2008-9, since it's already now 15 years since it happened?
This is a very, very difficult question to answer, Dakshin.
Hmm.
One reason being the more than a century of that horrific conflict has kind of split Sri Lanka into what you can call as a us and them. And unfortunately, when you have a majoritarian politics going on in a country, then things will go wrong. And even if assuming that there are changes at the ground level, both in the Tamil society and in the Sinhalese society, that the JVP could go and campaign in Tamil areas, seek votes from them, and get it also is itself a reflection of the changes taking place. India will have to keep note of this. Uh, what the Sri Lankan establishment, including the JVP, does not want is India constantly publicly tom-tomming uh, Tamil issues. This they feel actually backfires on them, because then whatever they do, even if assuming they do some good, it is assumed that you did it because India forced you to do it. In fact, there is an understanding within the Indian foreign policy establishment that what we call as megaphone diplomacy, which India practiced very loudly and vocally in the 1980s, telling Sri Lanka, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. Now, it didn't really help matters at all. It didn't help the Tamils also. So you need to do things quietly, and India does a lot of things quietly, even in countries like Myanmar or in
Mm.
Nepal, and they need to follow the same practice in Sri Lanka. Yes, there is a Tamil constituency. The Tamil constituency itself is not a monolithic constituency. So there is extremist pro LTT section. There are the so-called Indian Tamils of Sri Lanka. There are the Eastern Tamils. There are the Tamils who don't like the LTT. So it's a very how do I say, it's a confused situation. At the same time, India, I don't think will ever give up on speaking for the Tamil community, but the tone and tenor and even the noise decibel level would be very different.
In fact, amongst the various layers of complexities in India Sri Lanka relationship, you know, how the central government, relates to Sri Lanka and how it handles the Tamil question, don't you think will have some kind of a bearing on politics in Tamil Nadu? Because if you recollect the fact that the Manmohan Singh government, in 2008-9 did not intervene, when Tamil Nadu demanded that India do something about the war that was going on, which ended the whole civil war, the fight between the LTT and the Sinhalese. Uh, Somewhere a large population in Tamil Nadu held that against the Manmohan Singh government, and it in some ways probably went against them, and probably people even today hold that against the government. So in that sense, if the Modi government takes a wrong step as far as the way it deals with the Tamil question, or even if if it kind of appears to ignore the Tamil question in the larger interest of India-Sri Lanka relationship, you think it will have a bearing on the way the Tamil voter in Tamil Nadu will look at the BJP, when elections happen?
My personal understanding is that Sri Lanka will not be the dominant factor in any election in Tamil Nadu. Yes, there is
Mm.
an emotive link, but we need to understand that the old Tamil actors in Sri Lanka, some of them do not exist, and the topmost actor which doesn't exist anymore is the LTT. The LTT had a
Right.
certain language, had a certain attitude, and a certain contempt, let us say, to a lot of people, including India. Now, that doesn't exist anymore. So, there are changes which have already taken place in the Sri Lankan Tamil society, and those changes will have to be observed, will have to be seen. But primarily, one thing is very clear: India is going to look at Sri Lanka as a whole, with which a country with its own minority issues, minority problems. But at the end of the day, the Tamils and the Sinhalese and the Muslims will have to live together and build a nation. Now, it
Mm.
calls for compromises on various sides, the Tamils included, the Sinhalese included, and of course, it also calls upon India to understand things better and act better. I don't think the happenings in Sri Lanka will itself affect elections in Tamil Nadu in any significant way.
I mean, you think even the the constant friction, as far as the fishermen's issue is concerned, you think will not play any role as far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, or India Sri Lanka relationship is
It,
concerned?
it might it might play a role, but then again, as I said, this issue again has to be looked at from a Sri Lankan perspective as well. Only then we can arrive at a correct. It's precisely because these two perspectives are not able to meet each other's demands or requests is why this issue is getting dragged on. What exactly is the issue? For a
Hmm.
very long time when the war was on in Sri Lanka, the Tamil fishermen in the northeast of Sri Lanka could not go to sea and to fish. So the field was open. The sea was very rich because there was a war going on, and Indian fishermen could go occasionally violate the international line dividing Sri Lanka and India and fish and come back. Of course, there were a lot of risks. People got killed and things like that. Now they are going deeper and deeper into Sri Lankan waters because there is no war, no LTT, and
Right.
this is affecting the livelihood of the Tamil fishermen in the north of Sri Lanka. If anything, the present conflict is not between, say, the so-called Sinhalese Sri Lankan Navy versus the Indian Tamil fishermen, but actually is an issue between the two Tamil communities, the two Tamil fishermen of the two countries. And the
Hmm.
Tamil fishermen actually are asking Sri Lanka to protect them, and the protecting them would involve pushing back the Indians back to the Indian territorial waters. In fact, the Sri Lankan fishermen keep on asking, do our people get arrested in India? No. Why? Because we don't intrude into Sri Lankan waters. The Tamil fishermen from Tamil Nadu come into our waters, and when they get arrested for violating the law, they make a huge noise in Tamil Nadu as if they were in the right and we were in the wrong. This is not
Hmm.
the case at all. The same thing happens in Pakistan. When Indian fishermen cross into their waters, they get arrested, vice versa. But there, the noise decibel is very different. In Tamil Nadu, I think they need to understand that Indian bottom trawlers in particular, which ravage the Sri Lankan marine life, should be a complete no. You can't enter their waters and then complain that we have been arrested. So it's a
Right.
problem that's going to drag on till they understand each other's issues very well.
Okay, so that's an interesting way to look at it. That it's between the Tamil communities on both countries, and rather than any India versus Sri Lanka issue, so it doesn't. In that sense, it doesn't put too much pressure on the Indian government to sort it out, or it's something that needs to be resolved within the community. I would say the fishermen's community. I mean, isn't it? I mean, it's
Yeah, at
how
the
will
end of
work.
the day, the government of India will have to play a role in helping to resolve the issue and helping to facilitate discussions and talks between the two fishermen of the two countries.
Yeah. So coming back to the visit of Prime Minister Modi, is there, other than the defense pact which you already talked about, is there anything that we need to look at, in terms of significance?
Well, one of the significant things would be the starting of the solar project, power project in Sampur, in Trincomalee in eastern Sri Lanka. That would be a major project because this was supposed to be once upon a time a coal-based project, but this Nike is all for solar, which is fine. It might be costly in the beginning, but it will pay in the long run. It will come out to be much better. So
Hmm.
that is going to take place. And there would be a few things, including the fact that Modi will be visiting the heartland of the Sinhala Buddhism, which is Anuradhapura, in the north of Sri Lanka, in the north of, yeah, kind of north of Sri Lanka. And so essentially, the talks between the two countries, the two leaders, and their delegations, this will be important because they will have to sort out the nitty gritty of various things. And also, it will be good if the Prime Minister of India reaches out to the Sri Lankan political establishment, including those who don't have a big strength in the Sri Lankan parliament today.
Yeah, in fact, you have mentioned that the visit of Modi to Anuradhapura is of big significance because he's the first prime minister to visit that particular city, and it's with its historical significance. But why do you feel, why do you pointedly say that it is important? I mean, what is it that makes it important?
No, it's important. Let me first correct. Let me first make a correction.
Yeah.
Modi has visited that place once before too. I think he visited in
Okay.
2015, and
Okay.
that place has been visited by Jawaharlal Nehru. He is in fact the second Prime Minister to visit
Right.
Anuradhapura.
Hmm.
Anuradhapura. Let's put it this way: Anuradhapura is for the Sri Lankan Buddhists what, let us say, Kashi or Ayodhya or Rameshwaram would be to the Hindus in India. Now,
Hmm.
imagine for a moment that, let's say, Trump comes to India to take part in a Quad meeting and then makes a quick trip to Ayodhya, let us say. Now,
Hmm.
that has a certain significance. It will have, in fact, a
Right.
huge significance from the Indian point of view. So, Anuradhapura, now, if Modi can inaugurate a project in Sampur in eastern Sri Lanka online, he surely can do an online inauguration in Anuradhapura also. But
Hmm.
they also have a visit to the Anuradhapura, the sacred site, where, of course, he would be going. And so this would be looked at in the same manner as, let us say, a visit by Trump to Ayodhya would be by the majority, overwhelming majority of the Hindus and also the non-Hindus in India. So it has its own significance, and more so in the light of what you mentioned a little earlier about
Yeah.
India's constantly being seen over the decades as one who was always playing the Tamil card. And the Tamil card to some people is also a Hindu card. So it's, I think they're trying to balance everything. All the best
Hmm.
to them.
Yeah. Okay. I think that would be good. Thank you, MR, for this conversation, and let's see how it eventually goes, and maybe we can catch up again once the visit is done.
Sure, sure. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Thanks for speaking to me.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
MR. Thank you.